OP's husband's nephew tried to essa OP, and the nephew's mom accusing OP as she was the one who seduced him. My husband's nephew and Godson are 17 years old. My husband got a job offer overseas for a month. We live in a house, and because I felt uncomfortable living alone in the house, my sister-in-law suggested that I stay with them in their guest room. I love my husband's family. A big loving family that took me in and welcomed me with an open heart and arms, even with me coming from a broken home with no family to love me, especially his oldest sister, 47-ish. My husband and I are 41 and 32. I loved staying with my sister-in-law. Everything was going great besides missing my husband, whom I spoke to a couple of times a day. I am a night owl, and when everyone went to bed yesterday, I stayed up in the living room to binge on the House of the Dragon. I must have fallen asleep on the couch. I woke up later to find my nephew's hand under my shirt. I pushed him away, but he put his hand on my mouth and pushed me back on the couch. He hit me hard a couple of times and told me to stop moving. I grabbed a cola glass I had on the coffee table and hit him with it. My sister-in-law must have heard him grunting in pain and came downstairs. She started hitting him and pushing him out. She asked him to go to the guest house, and she went after him, probably to see to his head injury because he was bleeding. She later came back and took me to the bathroom because I had peed myself and cut my hand with the glass. She later gave me sleeping pills and stayed with me in the room. I woke up today at noon. Everyone but my sister-in-law was away. All the warmth had gone. She told me she was so disappointed in me. She opened her home to me, and yet I used her son. I told her that she knew the truth. She saw everything. She said she saw nothing, and nobody will believe someone like me if I want to break this family. I wanted to leave, but she blocked my way because what would the family say? I started crying and begged her to let me go, and I wouldn't say anything. Now I'm home, and I don't know what to do. This will destroy my husband. He loves his family. They're his pride and prize in life. What if he resented me for breaking up with his family and ruining their reputation? And worse, what if he didn't believe me? He'll be home in 3 weeks. The black eye will probably be gone by then. Edit, I'm sorry I messed up his age. He's 15 and will be turning 16 in a couple of months. I did bad math. Edit 2, thank you for the response. I'm sorry, I can't answer every question. I want to say that I've talked to my husband now. I had the usual scheduled phone call before bedtime, but I just broke down crying and told him everything. He FaceTimed me and saw my face. He told me to pack a bag and wait for his friend to come and pick me up because he never wants me to be home alone. My husband and I have been married for a little over a year, and we have been living in this city for a couple of months. I don't know many people here. Anyway, he told me to stay with his friend and his friend's family. They're good people. He is flying home tomorrow. Thank you, and I'm sorry again for not having the opportunity to answer everybody. Update. Hi everyone, this is a throwaway account. I have written here before, and I got a lot of support. I owe 100% to the online community that I took the correct measure and told my husband. If it were up to me, my own thoughts, and my sil, I would have just kept this quiet and tried to move on. I will, however, not answer any DMs because I don't want to read all the sick and abusive DMs like the ones I got from my first post. I will gladly answer your comments here, but I'm deleting this account as well after this update. I want to answer a few questions first. One question about my last update. Why did my husband believe me without asking questions? Many speculated that my husband must have known something about his nephew, and that's why he wasn't so surprised. No, I asked him this, and he said that apart from the bruises on my face, he just believes me. I have never given him reasons not to trust or believe me. Why my husband told me to live with his friend's family. Many questioned why I wasn't independent enough to live alone in my house. This is a new town to me. I come from a very big city with people everywhere. Moving to a smaller town and living alone in a big house was a big change for me. I didn't feel comfortable, so my husband suggested that I should live with his sister and bond with my new family. After what happened, however, I went back home. My husband was floored by his nephew's actions, and honestly, he didn't know what to expect from him or his parents anymore. He was scared they would hurt me, so he didn't want me to be alone. He was adamant that I wouldn't tell his family where I was either. He was just terrified. Also, I'm sorry I messed up his age. He was born in November of 2006, so he will be 16 soon. I did the math wrong and made him 17. My husband came home late in the afternoon the next day after my post. I have never been so happy seeing him like I did then. He called his sister and told her he was going over. When he came home, it looked like he had been crying. He asked me if I wanted to press charges, and that he wanted me to do it, but only if I wanted. When he was at his sister's, she tried to put the blame on me, but he told her to cut the crap if she really cared about her son. He asked her why she wasn't more worried about him. The way he escalated to beating a sleeping family member, going to this length to overpower them. He also asked her why she gave me sleeping pills. About that, I don't know why I took them. I just did. I've unfortunately always obeyed people who I thought had authority over me since childhood. She told him that I was panicking, and she couldn't calm me down. Anyway, she denied that her son had ever done anything like this and that she still thought I came on to him. My husband talked to his nephew as well, and he was saddened to see that he wasn't sorry or affected at all. He didn't even apologize. He said he was trying to wake me up because the couch wasn't comfortable, and I hit him. We have made a report. There's not much more I can do. I don't think it will lead to anything, to be honest. But I wanted it to be out there. My husband's brother called him to yell at him. They have already started with the smear campaign. My husband told them my side. I don't know who they will choose to believe. My husband has 6 siblings. We will have to see how this unfolds. His nephew is still a child, and my husband doesn't really want to hurt him. He thinks he needs help, but not the type his parents are offering, enabling him. Also, he shared the sentiment that many of you have. This boy will do it again, and probably I wasn't his first. It hurts him because he loves him very much, but he needs to tell people what he's capable of doing to protect their families. My husband has been quiet and distant these past couple of days. I didn't know what to do about it. I just felt immensely guilty. I didn't know if I dared to apologize to him and ask his forgiveness for ruining his relationship with his favorite sister and her family. When I finally had the courage to do it, he looked surprised at me. He cried and told me that he was the one who was sorry. He thought that he was finally giving me the big family that I dreamt of, and he hugged me. I cried in his arms. We don't know what will happen now. We have plans to move back to the big city. I don't know what to do with my new job. I need to quit after a couple of months. I'm a preschool teacher, so it shouldn't be hard to find a new job or get my old job back. Thank you again. I don't think I will be making any more posts. I just want to heal and move on. Second story. OP's nephew's girlfriend is the greatest piece of SHT. My nephew is a good guy. He's 21. He's had to make it on his own because his mother, my only technically sister, has put every man she's ever had in her life before her only child. He works, he's going back to school to learn a trade, and he has tried to take care of his girlfriend, who we have always known as a little off. He was trying to leave her because she's a mean drunk. She has hit him. She throws things. She has torn holes in their apartment that he now has to pay for. She's gotten so drunk that she passed out on the bus, and from the bus station, she was taken to the hospital with alcohol poisoning, which we now know was early on in her pregnancy. She's an fed up kid. She essentially gave herself a turkey bastard pregnancy using a used condom so she could trap my nephew, and she is now several months pregnant, but she never told anyone until she was confronted about it because she started showing. She's had no prenatal care, and she still drinks, smokes cigarettes, and does drugs. She's off the wall effing nuts too. My nephew is currently staying with us because he needed to get away from her, and she calls the house over 50 times a day at all hours of the day or night. We've tried to be diplomatic. We've all tried to get her to go to AITA, get some counseling, and see a doctor, but she refuses, and her mother enables all of her behaviors. We live in California. Does anyone know of any way we could bring this situation up to family court before or shortly after she has the baby so that she can't have custody? She's obviously an unfit mother, and she has mental problems of some sort, outside of all the drinking. Is there anything we can do in this situation that will protect the baby and my nephew from her? Personally, and you can say I sound like a bad person if you wish, but I really hope she either chooses to get an abortion or has a spontaneous abortion, because there is no way she has gone this far through her early pregnancy drinking and doing what she does to not have harmed the baby. I think that situation would be best for all those involved, especially for the baby. Any insight into how we can help this situation along would be greatly appreciated. Edit, I can't thank everyone enough for their advice and support, and wow, I never expected this to hit the front page. Okay, so a few things have been mentioned, and I'm looking into all of them. Making sure he gets a paternity test before signing anything. Document everything, record things she said, pictures and videotapes of her being drunk, nanny cams, the number of times she's called and texted, etc. Having her and the baby drug or alcohol tested at the time of birth. Get a social worker or a good lawyer involved. I've been given several sites on which I can do some research to find out exactly what the laws in my state and county say about this situation. And overall, stay positive and supportive of my nephew and his future child, should it survive that long. Thanks again, Reddit. Edit 2, she is also going to show her pictures of babies born with extreme fast and a lack of prenatal care. Relevant comments. She'll drink a whole bottle at a time, 2 or 4 times a week. She smokes about half a pack a day. And as for the drugs, I know she smokes weed multiple times a day, and I've been told she has gotten into meth and other hard drugs, but I've never actually seen her do them in front of me, so I cannot confirm what and how much. So far, CPS has given us that this sounds like a domestic issue, and there's nothing we can do until there's an actual child in danger bullshit, which, frankly, I don't believe should be the case. They should be able to intervene before the baby is even born. Update. I want to thank everyone for the kind words and advice. A lot of it was very useful. Now for the update. My nephew is now officially a single father to 4-month-old little Smithy 3, even though it's been a very rough time for him. She continued to drink through the end of her pregnancy, and while the baby has grown to be big as an ox as his daddy is 6 feet 5. You can tell by his facial features and certain developmental delays that he has fast and will likely have cognitive development issues as he gets older. After having the baby, we were hoping that would be enough of a wake-up call for her to decide to get her drinking in order or go into rehab. But instead she barely seemed to acknowledge the child was actually that, a child, and used him more as a tool to control my nephew further. My nephew has lost 3 jobs in the last 4 months due to her antics, on more than one occasion showing up to his work drunk, with no shoes or shirt on. The baby filthy, and screaming and crying that she needed help and couldn't handle him alone, and that my nephew needed to come home. Other times my nephew would arrive home and the baby would be screaming with a soaking diaper, full of his own dried-on sickness, and not having eaten in hours, and she'd be completely unwakeable. The police became involved in their squabbles often, usually because he would bring the baby to our house because she was passed out drunk as usual, and when she'd wake, she'd call the police and have them bring her to our house. Naturally, because he was the child's father, there was nothing they could do to take him from here, so they'd end up telling her to go home. At which point she'd begin yelling and screaming, and they'd sometimes arrest her. Other times they'd just take her back to the station to sober up. After my nephew found her passed out in their bed with another guy, with the baby full of his own SHT and vomit, he'd had enough of this and filed a restraining order against her, as well as for emergency custody of their son. He refused to allow her to see him at all unless she was sober, and even then, when she began to get out of hand, he'd tell her she'd have to leave or he'd call the cops and have her arrested. When their custody court date came, she was convinced that he wasn't going to go, and she was on a bender anyway, so she didn't go, and sole custody was awarded to my nephew. She is allowed to see him 4 hours per week under supervision if my nephew deems her sober and fit, but that's it. After the custody verdict came back, she began calling my house and screaming that she didn't have a baby anymore and that we could just unalive it because it wouldn't make a difference. She still does not understand how any of her actions led to what happened. She blames my nephew for plotting against her to take the baby, her mother for not stopping him, and my family for pretty much everything else. Her mother is supportive of my nephew, is aware that her daughter is ill, and is glad they are now away from her. We all are. Again, I thank everyone for their original input and advice. Much of it was helpful, and my nephew and great-nephew are now in a much safer, saner place.